In my video about saviors, I got a lot of comments mentioning how overlooked 21st Century Breakdown was, especially since I kind of dismissed it in that video. And a few subscribers even claimed that it's their favorite album. Bold of me to assume that they're subscribers, but although I liked the album, I admit that I overlooked it a bit. I discovered this album back in 2011, 2 years after it came out, and I played it to death and then let it collect dust on my shelf. But today I wanted to revisit 21st Century Breakdown, Green Day's follow-up to the phenomenon that was American Idiot. I had zero idea that this was a rock opera when I first heard it, not a clue. The only thing I noticed was the repetition of two names, Christian and Gloria. This time I didn't want to give 21st Century Breakdown a hard time just because I wasn't able to connect the dots. Spoiler though, I wasn't completely able to do that. Hell, I struggle to follow the story of American Idiot anyway, and I love that album. What I do find odd when listening to this album now is the similarities and callbacks to American Idiot that I wish were left out so that 21st Century Breakdown could have its own identity apart from American Idiot. If you wanted to be really harsh here, you'd call these recycled ideas on 21st Century Breakdown about rebellion, hand grenades, a male and female protagonist, stuff that we had heard before on their previous album. And Green Day kind of set themselves up for that criticism by thematically following in the footsteps of American Idiot a little too closely. Although I personally think it sounds pretty different from American Idiot. But as we get further and further from 2009 when this album was released, I find it much easier to judge 21st Century Breakdown on its own merits. Because if this album was released today, it's good enough that a ton of us would call it a return to form. So this critique that 21st Century Breakdown is too much like American Idiot might be valid, but if you're trying to take down this album in 2024, you've got to do better than that. It made way more sense in 2009 when expectations for a new Green Day album were sky high, and their last album was indeed American Idiot. The other criticism I see of this album, and one that I happen to agree with, is that 21st Century Breakdown is too damn long. After listening to this album a few times in preparation for this review, I discovered that I only think it's too long because the songs that I don't like are too long. The songs that I don't care for, which also happen to be very slow songs, aren't bad at all on their own, but in the context of this album, when I'm forced to sit through them all in one sitting, they're cumbersome to get through. Before the Lobotomy, Last Night on Earth, Last of the American Girls, Restless Heart Syndrome, 21 Guns, Even See the Light. I can't stress enough, though, that I like these songs individually. Billy sounds great on Last Night on Earth, and I love the piano leading us through that track. Restless Heart Syndrome pays off with a sick climax, and Last of the American Girls feels like a necessary exposition about one of our main protagonists, and 21 Guns, despite being overplayed to death, still feels like the most important track on this record. And at this point, I'm getting a little nervous on my re-listens. I can't really prove my own stance. I like the album, but I've always considered it mid, and I'm not sure why. There's a moment in my fourth or fifth re-listen this weekend that something clicks. My disappointment and apathy with 21st Century Breakdown is with its themes and lyrics. Not to say they're bad, I'm just not resonating with them on this album. Beyond that, I am rediscovering just how awesome this record is. It happens as East Jesus Nowhere ends, and Billy is just singing yeah over some rocking chord progression and drum work, which leads us into what might be the weirdest song on the record, Peacemaker. All of a sudden, I'm noticing the new in this record. Peacemaker is not what I'd expect out of modern Green Day, nor is Viva La Gloria Little Girl, and those are tracks that I've been sleeping on too much, but not nearly as much as I've been sleeping on Horseshoes and Hand Grenades. Again, it's set up by a simple but effective instrumental outro in the previous track that gets you ready for one of the punkest cuts in Green Day's late career. And when the Static Age rolls around with Trey Cool taking center stage for a moment, I realize just how much fun I'm having with this album. Ever since East Jesus Nowhere, I've been thinking, this sounds awesome. I like that a lot. That was really cool. So what happened? I have a really hard time ignoring lyrics and themes, and since they weren't landing with me on this record, I just was having a hard time fully getting into 21st Century Breakdown. When I finally committed to giving this album a pass for not resonating with me thematically, I started to love it. If you think it doesn't deserve a pass in that sense, that's fine, and I totally get that. But I'm excited to have found something in 21st Century Breakdown that I didn't before, in its transitions between songs, its range of musical influences, and its abundance of piano. Although there are a few songs that I will be very tempted to skip still, like Know Your Enemy, Before the Lobotomy, Christian's Inferno, and Last Night on Earth. I now have a new appreciation for 21st Century Breakdown and totally understand why so many people consider it as one of their favorite Green Day albums. With more listens, I might also put it near the top of my personal ranking of Green Day's best. And I fully admit that I've been wrongly dismissive of this album in the past. Thanks for watching. Comments, likes, and subscribes go a long way to support the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.